The grove was quiet, the rustling leaves playing a gentle symphony. Sunlight filtered through the trees, casting soft patterns. The Buddha sat cross-legged, his figure exuding peace and stillness. Disciples gathered around him, their faces curious and eager for wisdom. One young monk, Aaron, raised his hand timidly. "Master," Aaron began, "I feel something is missing. My heart is restless, and I cannot understand why." The Buddha's eyes softened as he looked at Aaron. "Aaron, tell me, when a bird flies, what carries it?" Aaron hesitated before replying. "The wind carries the bird." "Master," the Buddha nodded. "Indeed, the wind, invisible yet essential, supports its flight. And where does the bird rest at night? In the trees or on the ground?" "Master," Aaron answered thoughtfully. "Exactly," the Buddha said. "The bird finds rest, not in the wind, but in a solid place of its choosing." The disciples exchanged glances, trying to grasp the meaning hidden in the Buddha's words. The Buddha continued, "You, Aaron, are like the bird. You search for the wind to fill your emptiness." Aaron frowned slightly, still puzzled. "But Master, I don't understand. What does it mean to seek the wind?" "It means," the Buddha replied, "you are seeking fleeting things to fill a lasting void." He paused, letting the words sink in. Aaron's brow furrowed. "Fleeting things? Do you mean material possessions?" "Master?" "Yes, Aaron. And also fleeting emotions, fleeting achievements, and fleeting attachments," the Buddha said gently. "These are like the wind." "But Master," Aaron said, his voice tinged with frustration, "if these things are fleeting, what should I seek?" The Buddha extended his hand and pointed to the ground beneath them. "The earth beneath your feet is still. It supports you without condition. Seek that which is steady within you." Aaron lowered his gaze to the ground, contemplating the significance of the Buddha's analogy. The grove was silent, save for the occasional chirping of birds. The Buddha's voice softened further, resonating with compassion. "Aaron, do you know what an empty cup is for?" "To hold water." "Master," Aaron replied after a moment's thought. "Exactly," the Buddha said. "The emptiness of the cup gives it its purpose. The emptiness within you has a purpose too." Aaron tilted his head, intrigued. "What purpose, Master?" "To hold understanding, to hold peace, to hold the truths of the world," the Buddha explained. "Without emptiness, there can be no receiving." Aaron's expression shifted, a glimmer of realization dawning in his eyes. The Buddha continued, "Do not fear the emptiness you feel. Embrace it, for it is the space where wisdom grows." Another disciple, Maya, spoke up. "Master, how do we embrace emptiness without feeling despair or fear?" "Excellent question, Maya," the Buddha said, turning to her. "What do you do when you enter a dark room?" "I light a lamp." "Master," Maya answered promptly. "Precisely," the Buddha said, his face lighting up with approval. "Embrace emptiness as you would light a lamp in darkness." Maya nodded slowly, her gaze thoughtful. The Buddha stood, beckoning the disciples to follow him deeper into the grove. They walked in silence, their footsteps crunching softly against the earth. Eventually, they reached a small pond, its surface shimmering with sunlight. The Buddha knelt by the pond and cupped his hands to scoop some water. "Look into the water," the Buddha instructed, holding the water in his palms. The disciples leaned closer, observing their reflections. "The water shows you who you are, yet it is ever-changing. Can you hold it forever?" "Number." "Master," the disciples replied in unison. "Exactly," the Buddha said, letting the water trickle back into the pond. Clinging to what is fleeting is like trying to hold water. The disciples watched as the ripples spread across the pond, distorting their reflections. The Buddha continued, "True peace comes not from holding, but from letting go." Aaron stepped forward, his voice steady. "Master, How do we let go when our hearts cling so strongly? By understanding that holding brings suffering, the Buddha replied, and by realizing that letting go brings freedom. The disciples murmured among themselves, the wisdom beginning to settle in their minds. The Buddha rose, his movements graceful and deliberate. Let us return to the grove, he said, leading the way. Back at the grove, the disciples sat in a circle around the Buddha. He looked at each of them, his gaze kind and penetrating. The emptiness you feel is not a flaw, the Buddha said. It is a gift, a reminder of your potential. Maya raised her hand again. Master, how can emptiness be a gift when it feels so painful? Pain is the teacher. Maya, the Buddha said gently. It shows you where to look, what to release, and what to embrace. The disciples absorbed the words, their hearts heavy yet hopeful. The Buddha closed his eyes for a moment, as if drawing from a well of infinite wisdom. Imagine a flute, he said, opening his eyes. Its beauty comes from the emptiness that lets it sing. Aaron smiled faintly, the metaphor striking a chord within him. The Buddha continued, your emptiness is like the flute's hollow. Without it, the music of life cannot flow through you. The disciples nodded, some wiping tears from their eyes. The Buddha's words carried a weight that transcended logic, touching their very souls. Embrace your emptiness, the Buddha said, his voice firm yet gentle. It is not something to fear, but something to cherish. Aaron bowed deeply, his heart swelling with gratitude. Thank you, Master, he said, his voice trembling. The Buddha smiled. The answers are not mine to give, Aaron. They are already within you. Seek them there. The disciples sat in silence, the grove enveloping them in its tranquil embrace. The Buddha's teachings had planted seeds of understanding, seeds that would grow in the fertile soil of their hearts. The sun began to set, casting the grove in hues of gold and crimson. The Buddha remained seated, his presence a beacon of peace and wisdom. The disciples knew that their journey was just beginning, but they felt a renewed sense of purpose. As the last rays of sunlight faded, the grove fell into quiet stillness. The Buddha's words lingered in the air, a timeless echo that would guide the disciples on their paths. And within their hearts, the emptiness began to transform, not into something to fear, but into something to celebrate. Another day, another gathering in the serene grove. The disciples sat in anticipation, their eyes fixed on the Buddha. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of blooming flowers. The Buddha sat silently, his presence radiating calm and wisdom. Maya spoke first, her voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. Master, peace feels elusive when challenges overwhelm the heart. How can I hold on to it? The Buddha's gaze was gentle as he replied, Maya, when you walk through mud, what happens to your feet? They become dirty. Master, Maya answered after a moment of thought. Indeed, the Buddha said. And when you reach clean water, what do? I wash the mud away. Master, Maya responded, her curiosity deepening. The Buddha smiled. The mud is like life's struggles, and the water is your mindfulness. Peace is the act of cleansing. Maya nodded, her mind absorbing the metaphor. The Buddha continued, consider the lotus in the pond nearby. Its roots are buried in mud, yet it blooms above the water. The disciples turned their gaze to the pond, where a single lotus stood as a testament to resilience. The Buddha's voice softened, carrying the weight of understanding. The lotus does not resent the mud, for it knows the mud nourishes its growth. Maya tilted her head, a spark of realization flickering in her eyes. So, Master, are you saying that struggles are necessary for peace? Yes, Maya, the Buddha said, his tone unwavering. Peace is not the absence of struggle. It is the strength to rise above it. The grove fell silent, the disciples reflecting on the profound simplicity of the Buddha's words. Another disciple, Suri, raised his hand hesitantly, Master, I try to rise above struggles, but my thoughts pull me back. What should I do? The Buddha regarded Suri with compassion. Suri, imagine a clear pond. What happens when you throw a stone into it? The water ripples. Master, Suri replied. His brow furrowed. Exactly, the Buddha said. Your thoughts are like stones, and your mind is the water. What happens when you stop throwing stones? The water becomes still again. Master, Suri said, his voice soft with realization. The Buddha nodded. Stillness is where peace resides. Do not fight your thoughts. Let them settle like ripples fading in water. Suri bowed his head, a sense of calm washing over him. The Buddha turned his attention back to the group, his eyes full of warmth. Mindfulness is the key to stillness. It is the light that guides you through the darkness of turmoil. Maya raised her hand once more, her expression curious. Master, how do we cultivate mindfulness when the mind feels overwhelmed? Maya, the Buddha said. What do you do when a candle flickers in the wind? I shield it with my hands. Master, Maya replied promptly. Precisely, the Buddha said, his voice gentle yet firm. Shield your mindfulness by focusing on the present moment, free from distractions. The disciples murmured among themselves, the lesson beginning to take root in their hearts. The Buddha's voice rose above the whispers. Calm and steady, peace is not given, it is created. Each moment of mindfulness is a step toward its fulfillment. The grove returned to stillness, the disciples contemplating the power of mindfulness. The Buddha stood and gestured for them to follow him. They walked toward the edge of the grove, where a small field of wildflowers stretched before them. The Buddha knelt beside a single flower and pointed to its petals. Observe this flower, he said, his voice inviting attention. Its beauty lies not in its perfection, but in its resilience. The disciples knelt around the flower, their eyes tracing its delicate form. The Buddha continued, like this flower, your peace is not flawless. It endures despite the storms of life. Maya's voice broke the silence. Master, does peace require effort, or does it come naturally? It requires both. Maya, the Buddha replied. Effort to cultivate, and natural acceptance to sustain. Strive without clinging and flow without resisting. The disciples exchanged thoughtful glances, the dual nature of peace resonating deeply. The Buddha stood and began to walk back to the grove. The disciples followed, their hearts and minds fuller with every step. When they returned, the Buddha seated himself beneath the ancient tree. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, as if drawing wisdom from the earth. Then he spoke again. A life without peace is like a bird trapped in a cage. Its wings yearn for the open sky. The disciples listened intently, the imagery sparking vivid emotions. The Buddha's voice softened, becoming almost melodic. But the cage is not made of iron. It is made of your fears, doubts, and attachments. Suri's eyes widened as he asked, Master, how do we escape a cage that we cannot see? By understanding its illusion. Suri, the Buddha answered. The cage exists only because you believe it does. Let go, and the door opens. The disciples sat in stunned silence, the weight of the Buddha's words settling over them. The grove seemed to breathe with them, the air alive with clarity and purpose. The sun began to set, casting golden hues across the grove. The Buddha's voice carried one final teaching. Peace is not an end but a path. Walk it with mindfulness, rise with resilience, and live with compassion. The disciples bowed deeply, their hearts brimming with gratitude. They knew the journey to peace was long, but they now held the tools to walk it. As darkness enveloped the grove, the disciples felt the glow of understanding within them. The Buddha's teachings were like seeds, ready to bloom in the fertile soil of their souls. Another day, another lesson under the sheltering branches of the grove. The disciples assembled, their eyes filled with anticipation. The morning sunlight danced across the leaves, its warmth weaving through the stillness of the grove. The Buddha sat silently, his presence a beacon of tranquility and insight. Cal spoke first, his voice earnest yet troubled. Master, despite my efforts, I still feel something is missing. Is inner peace truly attainable? The Buddha's gaze held Cal with gentle strength. Cal, when a flame burns, what gives it life and sustains it? Cal answered hesitantly, the candle and the air. Master, precisely, the Buddha said. Without the candle and air, the flame cannot exist. Peace requires sustenance to remain alive. Cal frowned slightly. Master, what sustains peace within us? How do we keep the flame from extinguishing? The Buddha extended his hand toward the sky, where birds soared freely above the grove. Observe the birds. What guides their flight? Cal replied, his voice steady. The wind and their wings. Master, the Buddha smiled. And yet, they do not resist the wind. They work in harmony with it to reach their destination. Cal's eyes reflected contemplation, the metaphor beginning to resonate. The Buddha continued, inner peace is like the flame. Like the bird's flight, it requires harmony between effort and acceptance. Another disciple, Aaron, raised his hand. Master, how do we find harmony when the heart is weighed down by suffering? The Buddha regarded Aaron with compassion. Aaron, imagine carrying a heavy stone. What happens when you set it down? It feels lighter. Master, Aaron replied, his voice soft. Exactly, the Buddha said. You must release what burdens your heart to make space for peace to grow. Aaron lowered his gaze, his mind absorbing the lesson. The grove was quiet, the disciples reflecting deeply on the Buddha's teachings. Maya spoke next, her voice steady but curious. Master, if peace requires effort, how do we begin the journey? Maya, the Buddha said, what do you do when you plant a seed? I prepare the soil and water it. Master, Maya replied promptly. Correct, the Buddha said. Inner peace begins by preparing the soil of your mind and nurturing it with mindfulness and compassion. The disciples nodded, the analogy settling deeply within their hearts. The Buddha's voice remained calm, resonating with clarity and purpose. A seed grows slowly, yet with patience. It blooms into something beautiful. Peace is no different. The grove returned to silence, the disciples contemplating the steps to cultivate peace. Cal spoke once more, his expression tinged with doubt. Master, what if the seed fails to bloom? What if we fall short in our efforts? Cal, the Buddha said, his voice steady. What do you do when a candle's flame flickers? I adjust the wick or shield it from the wind. Master, Cal answered. Precisely, the Buddha said. When peace falters, adjust your approach or shield it with patience and understanding. Cal's face softened as he nodded, the doubt within him beginning to dissolve. The Buddha turned to the group, his gaze warm and unwavering. Peace is a journey, not a destination. Every step taken with mindfulness brings you closer. The disciples exchanged thoughtful glances, the path to peace becoming clearer in their minds. The Buddha stood and beckoned them to follow him. They walked to the edge of the grove, where a small hill overlooked the distant horizon. The Buddha gestured to the horizon, his voice calm and deliberate. What do you see before you? The sun setting behind the hills. Master, Maya replied, her tone filled with wonder. Indeed, the Buddha said, the sun does not rush or resist, it rises and sets with grace and certainty. The disciples listened intently, their hearts moved by the simplicity of the imagery. The Buddha continued, like the sun, peace does not need haste or resistance. Let it rise and set naturally within you. Maya tilted her head, her eyes reflecting understanding. Master, is peace always present, even when we cannot feel it? Yes. Maya, the Buddha said. Peace is like the air. Though unseen, It surrounds you and waits for your embrace. The grove fell silent once more, the weight of the Buddha's teachings settling over the disciples. Cal spoke again, his voice steady yet hesitant. Master, how do we embrace peace when fear clouds the mind? Cal, the Buddha said, what do you do when fear grips your heart? I focus on my breathing. Master, Cal replied. Correct, the Buddha said. Breath is the bridge between fear and peace. Use it to calm the mind and center the spirit. Cal's expression softened, the lesson resonating deeply within him. The Buddha turned back to the group, his gaze kind and encouraging. Fear is not an enemy. It is a teacher, guiding you toward understanding and resilience. The disciples nodded, their hearts filling with courage and clarity. The Buddha's voice carried one final teaching. Peace is not something to achieve. It is something to live, to nurture, and to share with others. The sun sank below the horizon, casting golden hues across the grove. The disciples bowed deeply, their hearts brimming with gratitude. They knew their journey to peace was ongoing, but they now carried the tools to walk it, as darkness enveloped the grove. The disciples felt the glow of understanding within them. The Buddha's teachings were like seeds, ready to bloom in the fertile soil of their souls. Thank you for watching. Buddha's teachings are always with you. Subscribe to our channel and we will see you in the next video.